Добрый вечер.
Здравствуйте, товарищи. Сегодня в нашей программе.
What is up? How are you? The official Sidechain interview number 1.
Yeah, trial and error for sure.
So yeah, if anything, it's my fault. But yeah, I'm gonna pick your brain a lot because I'm like, I was trying to look deep into the videos. Or at least to me, there is a technical part of the video that kind of gives a glimpse at the process.
Yeah, because I do share the screen like in my stories and stuff, like even in the IG stories. Because at first it was just me kind of sharing a couple sketches and things, but enough people expressed to me that it was inspiring them creatively. I kind of kept doing it. But what I think probably the main reason I do it is to show that, because I think that a lot of people have described a lot of my compositions as complex. And in fact, even some people have been like, he's not using Koala. He's got to be doing Ableton or something.
Yes, you know? That's a huge win for you.
For sure. So when I share it, I'm showing people it's like, no, it's actually simple. Like you can do this too. Which is just, I think the thing that Koala highlights, because it's just a sampler, is that it's really about the choices you make. You know, because you can use the same sampler, but depending on your instincts and how long you've practiced, you're going to make stronger choices. At the end of the day, I think that's kind of what it's showing. You see my screen record, it's like the ideas, you know, that's basically what it is.
Very, very interesting that, or at least it seems to be from what I've seen, you're working with rather smaller parts. Is it?
You mean like not sampling like a whole phrase? And stuff?
Exactly, like not the whole, like not a melody that you or like not a loop, but really just a bleep and a blob, a note from there and stuff like that. Is it your approach?
That's right. Yeah, definitely. Like I've noticed since the beginning, like when I first started, you know, learning when, you know, it's like, what the fuck is a bar? What's quantization, you know, back in those days, like even from like back then, I just very naturally kind of lean towards almost even if it's sampling, make it all my own. I just had that in me, you know. So like but I still know how to use a phrase. Like I know that technique, and I like people that do that are really good at it. I think that just comes down to an ear, you know, because for example, like obviously you got a lot of older cats that were good at it, but one of the newer guys that's really good at it is like knowledge, you know, because this stuff is just loops, but you can let it go for 10 minutes. Like he finds just that perfect phrase. So I really like that art form, but me in particular, I really like taking like there'll be a whole beautiful sample, but I end up just taking a bing, you know, and like I'll take that. And now you play it, turn it to a chord or make a progression out of the bing, 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 or just find a little rose, you know, that's a common one. Or like, I like weird sounds. Like I'll sample weird stuff. Like it might be like just moment on like a cartoon or something. And you start playing with that. You start time stretching and pitching it, reversing it. It's like, this sounds crazy, you know? So I just really like that. Like to where if you I like to challenge who sampled basically.
Do you have a library of those sounds that you pull into a project, or is it like you start in a blank project, get something new, and then break it down into those atoms? What's
you killing it, bro? These are good questions, man. But well, I actually over time. Now I kind of, because you know, the more you do it, I kind of had go-to sounds I like went back to. So I do kind of have like a bit of a collection, almost like not organized. You know, most of us aren't organized, but in my brain, I'm like, I'm gonna go back to that sound because I remember it. So I do have like a collection, and I think that's kind of creates some of the sound. Like when someone hears it, it's like, oh yeah, that's you know, I've heard that before. That's Tatzu. But like but I do like to kind of each time there's always some new element, maybe something inspired me. Maybe there's a sample that I heard and I'm getting a sound from that. But even when I do something new, I'm still do bring in some of my kind of, you could say, my library, like from the years of weird sounds or things I like, and because I just know what they do. Because I've worked with them so much, so I know how I can make it work. So
almost as your instruments, or like as your, you know, other people have their favorite synths, and you have them for this reason.
And see, this is Sidechain gang, so you know, I'll put all the sauce out there. For example, one that I do that I went back to, like one time I flipped the Daniel Caesar, that gets you. Was that that little note? I took that because there's one of them, like he does different ones throughout the song, but there's one towards the end where it's like, and it goes the longest. And I took that and I ended up using that on like 4 or 5 different joints now. So that's became one of my sounds, just that little vocal chop. So I like taking vocal chops and kind of turning them into synths. And over time, you know, I've collected a couple of those, like that kind of stuff. So just each time I sample, there might be a sound from it. Like there's another one, the A. Marie song, her first song, A. Marie, it was like a da, 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 da. Oh, like, oh, why do we fall in love? There's some beautiful moments in that. Like I took the acapella, and there's some beautiful harmonic moments where I've taken that, and that's like one of my synths, like vocal chops. And yeah, over time I've collected that, and it creates unique stuff when you start blending it together. Yeah.
So, one thing that strikes me is that you do employ a lot of the chromatic mode in that, and I think this is, or at least partly, this is what creates the illusion of complexity in your beats. Because actually, if you look at your sequencer, it's not that many sounds in a sequence, but it changes a lot. So it creates like it's like, what is going on? And right. So one of the elements that I've been introduced to through you is the chromatic mode, that you go crazy on those 3 scales up and down, and have all the like tiny bits of those, which creates this beautiful texture to me. And is it do you use those, like do you pull those vocals that you then kind of misuse as synths? Is it what's going on there?
It's interesting you picked that out, like the kind of the octave range and the change ups and stuff like that. I actually learned that. I kind of taught myself it by like studying, because kind of like you mentioned how a lot of people started rapping like boom, 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 and then that's the melody, like you stick with, because you know a lot of us aren't like trained, we're just using our ear. But I remember there was a period where I was trying to get better at my bass lines, because they felt so like basic, like because you know I started as a woo head, so for a while it was okay to be like the RZA, just boom, boom. I was cool with that in the beginning, but then I was listening to, you know, some of my inspirations, like, you know, Fly Low, and then I'm listening to like Kate Trinata, and then you're hearing like, and when I say Fly Low, a lot of people think Thundercat, but I mean actually like when Fly Low plays his bass line, it's not Thunder, but like I could hear how like this is so interesting, like how are they making their bass line like so interesting? It's not just like 2 or 3 notes. And so I actually started doing a little dive on YouTube. I was like just looking at tutorials on how to make your bass lines interesting. And a couple of things that stuck with me that kind of became my style was, they said one was don't always end going down. Because you know, on the last part of the phrase, a lot of people like boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom. So they like sometimes in going up, kind of creates it more interesting. They also said you don't always have to stay in the same octave. So even with the bass line, you know, you might have that boom boom, but you listen to K on the fly, like boom 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 boom. I'm like, okay, so I started playing around with that, just seeing how interesting I could make it. And then I started to figure out a technique, and I started really just focusing just on bass lines and working on that. And then that kind of went into how I play the other stuff too. So like what you kind of picked up, like try and just make the melodies interesting.
In terms of record, do you record this in one go, or like the reason I'm asking, like, shout out to RTO, because I've seen him doing this. He was working on a bass line and didn't had like the initial, he was figuring out where he wants to go. So instead of figuring it out in a whole, he recorded those, like the fundamentals, and then he started layering it basically. So he started playing the notes in between on the second take and the third take, which was like so mind-blowing to me, because like, why make it difficult on yourself? You know,
right. It actually makes it easier.
Yeah. And is it like, what's your approach with those? How do you approach the complexity of the melody in the bass line, say?
Yeah, the way you just described that, I do that sometimes too. Like if I can't figure it out, and I used to do that always in the beginning because I wasn't that good yet, and I was like trying to figure it out. I do kind of like the root notes, and then play around and see what works, and eventually it would come together. But now I've done it so long that nowadays I just play it out. I kind of just know where they are, especially on Koala, and I'll just do a couple takes, and then and sometimes just on the second go. I mean, it sounds like I'm kind of bragging. I'm trying to not, but like it just now it just is. It's like I don't overthink it too much. I just kind of and I'll listen. I kind of like it. I might nudge a note, and then I'll move on. So now I can kind of just play it out, but because of the practice, yeah.
And I mean, the tools, like, this is what I love about Koala. It is so well thought through. The chromatic mode thing. So
I was just looking if I had it. I think I got it downstairs, but I started on the machine, like the machine 2.0. And I was just about to raise mine up, but it's like because that's kind of how I started too. Because on machine, you go to the chromatic mode and you play the pad. So I just found like I'm better with the pads than like keys. I just makes sense to me better to find it. Yeah.
The advantage that I see in Koala's grid, though, is that it has more keys. Like the 16 pads are basically just one octave and a little bit. And that makes it harder to do the Koala jumps, to jump like 2 octaves up and then go 1 octave down. And so that's right. Yeah. Shout out to Koala.
Which Merrick, he modeled that after Ableton. Like he's very inspired by Ableton. There's quite a few things, like even the way he approached time stretching and things like that. Like Ableton is his favorite DAW. So a lot of Koala he's inspired from, like Ableton. So quite a bit of it is designed after that.
It's crazy. Like his time stretcher is just incredible in terms of sound, especially in the extremes. I find once you start stretching a sample to the extremes, when you take like a little chop and then go like 16 bars, the reverb that it introduces is just it's a tool in its own, in my opinion, where you can go into sound design. I was going to ask is like the sampling techniques, or like do you do that? Like what's your favorite goes to in terms of like, well, let's take this, stretch it out, apply the effects and resample it back, or what do you like doing to explore?
You kind of hit it, because I'm definitely kind of like the left field, like weird brain feeder type, lane a bit. So I like I want it to sound disjointed, random, I want artifacts, you know. So like you kind of hit it on the head. Like one of my go-tos is before I try anything, usually my first idea is if I have like a sample or something, I'll go to the time stretch on Koala. I go to beats. And then from beats, yeah, I'll put it like, it might naturally put it at 2 bar. I'll go 1 up, like 4 bar, like you said. And it already starts sounding like real wobbly and weird. And then after that, I'll reverse it. Like, how's that sound? I'm like, sometimes I'm like, nah, and then sometimes I'm like, that's crazy. And then I might take a part and chop it, or maybe I'll keep it. And now I'll take that, and I don't even just use that. Now I'll play that in the Chromatic and see how progression sounds now that it's reversed, it's stretched, it's weird and wobbly. And that's kind of my first process, is trying to find something that sounds, it catches my interest. It sounds weird, it sounds new, it's like random, and that like inspires me if I can find something like that. And then that gets me going. Once I find that, it's just, I'm gonna complete it, because just the ideas keep coming. But that's kind of my first goals, is just trying to find, I'm really after like randomness, like it be unpredictable, and like I stretch it, sound design. But that's kind of my first shot when I try.
Super interesting. That means like you say you pick something up, sample it in. You then do the Autochop in this random mode, or just? Actually,
I never Autochop. I've never, like, even like back in my using the MPC and stuff, I found I always like to just, I know what I want. Like, I don't want it to just generate 16 and then like boom, like, you know, I used to do that technique when I was first learning.
But it's interesting that you mentioned that you already, like, so you listen to a sample and then something catches your ear and you take that.
Yeah, it might be a couple of parts. It might be like, rarely do I like take a phrase and then chop it anymore. Lately, I kind of got back to that a little bit, like the Dibia flip sessions that were going on around, just kind of like as an exercise. And I made some stuff that was, it was fun, you know, because like I haven't done that in a while. But yeah, I don't know. I have more fun. I kind of almost, when I approach something, I kind of almost already know I'm going to find a sound. I'm going to flip that sound, and then I'm going to add a bunch of synths on it. Like, I kind of know that's probably where I'm going to go with it. So I kind of don't rely as much on the sample, as much as I know that's going to be like the beginning, like my starter idea. And then it really comes together when I start adding my sounds and synths and the bass and all that. So, which kind of, I'm very inspired by DJ Unique. Like, my first favorite group of Bone Thugs and Harmony. Yeah, you familiar with DJ Unique? He's the producer. So like, you know, it's the first of the month, get up, or see you at the crossroads, you don't be lonely. You know that?
I am terribly sorry to tell you that I'm an uneducated idiot when it comes to like music. I know Stolen Drums and Sidechain Family. I listen to them.
It's all good.
Pack all the things, hey.
But their producer though, like, I noticed, I didn't even realize this when I was younger listening, but back now that I like went back and studied what he did, he was sampling a lot of the stuff that other people were sampling, but your favorite parts of the beat was stuff he was playing over it. Like, he played, you know, because he was really West Coast. He played a lot of like the whiny sine wave. He did these cool melodies. He used the bass sometimes for the samples. But that really inspired me, like those sounds from when I was younger. And I always like to kind of play over stuff now. So
you mentioned synths, and the question here is like, where do you? So obviously you work with the samples of the synths. Do you sample them in playing them and say AUM or something, or do you get them off the record as well?
Yeah, basically when I use in Koala, if it's a synth, it's literally like it's like a C3 note. Like one of the ones I use the most, it's just it's like a sampled sound. It's just a square wave. Like, people can hear a lot of square waves that I use, but it's like back when I was using the Android phone, I downloaded a little Famicom synth, like a Nintendo synth, and I just pushed. Yeah, and all I did was push a C3 note, like I just recorded that, put that in Koala. So I'm literally just playing a note. But then when you take that note, you can play it in Chromatic. And it's literally just a raw square wave. I didn't like tweak knobs or anything. It's just raw. But in Koala, after you start to play with the attack and release, you know, maybe you resample it, put a little dirt on it, put a little crush, you play around. Now you're tweaking like a synth, kind of like
you do that knobs. A lot. You do the resampling with the effects. You employ that?
Yeah, I do. I think I did more like lately. I haven't too much, to be honest. I'm just throwing the sounds in, and on like kind of the master. I am kind of like always have a little reverb. I think we talked about that before.
Yeah, the Shaolin technique.
Yeah, I have a little compression and things like that. And sometimes what I like to do, I put I will resample a synth, but I like putting the flange, like you know, you got the vibro and then the flange. If you put a little flanger on it, on like a synth sound, like now like it's like it's a crazy sound, and then you turn it to a chord. And it's like, and you pan it a little, so it's kind of blending in. It's cool. You get some really cool sounds.
It's very interesting how the effects behave on, obviously on the extremes, but also on tiny settings. And the same goes with temp delay. I think, like on a tiny setting, it just widens it up a lot, which is really interesting when resampling that stuff or using it as a tiny master effect. So that's yeah. Shout out to you for for introducing me to that word. This is something that I discovered by accident because I tend to lay out the beat, but then go into AUM and record synths there. Because you know the Model 15 or the Any Mode, they have this beautiful thing that goes over time, which is hard to like. You need to sample longer things to get that effect because they're like heavily modulated, and then you need like a full 8-bar loop to have the full thing develop. And those things in bass, so I sampled them back into Koala and sequence them there. But once you do this 3 octaves, 2 octaves up, all of a sudden you get sound effects. Additional layer done. I have effects too.
Right.
But so that's the actually like the resampling is still like, do you resample then you put it on loop and then resample the longer note, or what's the process on resampling, and how do you tune it in actually?
See, before Koala, I was like all this. So like so I'm, it was like second nature kind of that, that way of working, like resampling. But I find the way that I like to do it the most is I resample loop. Are you familiar with that function?
Yeah, oh, you mean when you hit basically the exports? Export, and then you can just take your sample or the whole sequence or individuals, you mean?
Yeah, okay. That's right, because I know a lot of people, they'll kind of get the settings the way they want it, and then they'll go to the pads and they'll like record an app, and they'll do it and they'll put it in another pad. Now it's in that pad. Well, me, I realized that I rather go to the sequencer, the sound that I want. I'll play it and let it record like it's a sequence. Because now while it's going live, I can now play with the performance and see how it's affecting it.
Genius.
So I'll do that live. I just found that's how I like to do it. Now I can really play around. And then when I get how I like it, resample loop, and now that's on the pad. And you can just trim it how you want. That's more like turning knobs.
Yes. Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much. It makes so much sense. Yes, of course. Like it's, of course. So you just make like a 1 bar, 2 bar loops or whatever that makes like your phrase basically.
That's right. So like if it's a synth sound, I might just, and the sequence is just playing, but now I'm like adding like the crunch, and you play with it. Yeah.
And then you were excellent. This is another Shaolin technique right there.
For sure.
Before, I assume the funniest part is always to perform at the end, to like put those effects on and just play around with that. Do you play with the sequences, or do you lay out basically the song in one sequence?
In the beginning, I found myself always liking to play with the sequence because it's not a technique I do anymore. But what I used to do, that was a way I added variety to my bass lines. Because if I had like the same sequence and then the same sequence, but just the bass line was different, you just changing the sequence at different times. And if it's a different bass line, it's making it, vary. So I used to play with that a lot, but now I put it all together in like a song mode. And I like working with that better because I don't like to have to worry about switching. And then sometimes I would mess up and I do it at the wrong time. Like, fuck it. And now that's just what it is. And, because it'll get annoying trying to get it all right. But if I just let it play, and I kind of, now what I do is if I have the different sequences, I'll put them together. And then from there, I'll work on the transitions. Like if I know it goes into this part, I'll go in like, okay, I'm going to take the drum and snare out of here. So then it's kind of quiet and then comes to the next part. And so from the overall song mode, I'll then go and define the transitions. So that's kind of, it all goes together. But I like
lay it
working
out
together.
Like what I enjoy a lot is doing that and then putting it in AUM and throwing a few Koala FX plugins. So I have like, instead of just one performance mode, I have like 3 of them. And I put one is then routed to drums only, and one is routed to sample only, and one is the master effect, which kind of lets you glitch more controlled in a way. Like you can, by the way, did you actually figure out, like I still struggle with predicting what happens when patterns are not of the same length. So say you have like 4 bar loops and 2 bar loops, and you start switching between those, it's kind of it's fucked up. I can't put my finger on like, this is exactly how it works. This is why it jumps there when they are not of the same length. Do you by any chance have an idea what's going on there?
Well, what my understanding was is that the length, I think it has to do with when the shortest one starts. That's just how I've thought about it. So like if it's like a 4 bar and it's about to go to if it's a 4 bar, if it's about to go to the beginning of the next 2 bar and then you push at that time, then it's gonna go like right on sync on the other 2 bar. But if you say if it was like an 8 bar, I know it's kind of hard to explain actually. I have thought about it, but yeah, I don't even deal with it like that anymore. Like you said, I used to switch between the sequences, but yeah, I just put it together because it is a bit, you kind of want it to work a certain way, but it's like depending on what the length is. Yeah, it's kind of, if it's not the same length, it can get a bit funky.
One thing that I just saw now, like when in performance, I saw you go like using the pitch mode on the final song. You will go like, you'll just slow it down, which it's an interesting effect for sure, but you seem to apply it as a static effect. So you just slow down the overall playback.
Yeah, I like it because it keeps the BPM, like the BPM doesn't change. But I always like playing around with seeing if there's a different pitch that I like it at. So just as part of this more exploration, like if I got like an idea, I'm like, okay, this sounds cool. Like maybe it's a interesting 8-bar I got going. Then one of my next steps is now I'll kind of, let's just see, I might turn it down a little and just listen to how the sounds are now interacting. And sometimes I like that idea way better at that pitch, or sometimes before I went down or up and I'm like, I'm hearing like the key the notes are in now and the way the drums are smacking. I'm like, it gives me such a new idea. I delete everything in that sequence except those chords and I start writing now from that pitch. And then like that gives me a new idea. I've done that sometimes. Sometimes I've done it and I just like where everything is at that pitch. I'm like, okay, we're gonna start writing from here now. And I make the rest of the thing from that, just hearing the different. And I find 9 times out of 10, I like going up in pitch because it's like everything's a little pitched up. The drums are more crunchy, like it's just more interesting, a little weird and random. Just most times I find I like to do that. So, but yeah, I always like to try to hear, like, just play around, constantly experiment and try to find something.
Well, you were pushing you're pushing this instrument a lot. Like most people are just like, well, okay, that's my sequence, that's my samples. You're using like the whole of it in like it's sweating by. I'm like, oh shit, these effects are not supposed to be running all the time. Hell yeah, they are. Yeah. Do you then resample, or do you stay like you use the dynamic effect applied? And because I'm like, once you play your sounds in chromatic mode, the pitch is applied, right? So you're basically you're not listening to the original sound, you're always listening to the modulated sound, which is kind of nice because you don't have to sweat about like, where's the note? It's still the same scale that it was previously, and you don't have to retune anything.
Yeah, 9 times out of 10, I'm always kind of like, 9 times out of 10, I've made like kind of maybe a nice, or sometimes 6-bar. I like a lot of my stuff is 6 bars actually. I don't even like the 4 and 8. I kind of got that from Jay Dilla. Yeah, like one of my favorite Jay Dilla beats was with De La Soul. Stakes is high. Like
it's exactly
beat, that's a 6-bar. Yeah, and like, you know, Tribe Called Quest, I think Electric Realization was like 3/4. That's 3/4 meter. So I'm always like playing with those different kind of time signatures and loops. So I do a lot of 6 bars or whatever, but I'll get an interesting idea. 9 times out of 10, I pitched it up or down and I made the whole beat from that pitch.
So you just record the idea, the initial melodic content. Actually, do you start with the melodic content or with the drums?
Most times, especially now, it's usually the drums. But it used to be, I felt like my drums used to be like a weak point because I kind of was so melody focused. Because again, it was like different points where I was even working on bass lines, and then I started developing melodies, and that's all I thought about. But my drums were lacking, and then I got the melody and the bass. So in these last few months, it's been really working on the drums. So I kind of like to start with that now, but it's not like a system.
It's a mixture.
It changes. Yeah.
Okay. And when working with the drums, obviously you play them out, I suppose, right? But do you use the swing in Koala, or do you use the unquantized, or the just fully quantized and then push them around a little? What's the process there?
Yeah, it depends what I'm making. I pretty much always, I've never not had the swing. I have the swing usually kind of maybe a little past the W, maybe about right at a little past the W. So I think that's a little more than 50% sometimes. So I usually always have that there. And I normally, don't have quantization on, but if I do, it's very specific. Like especially if I'm making something like kind of more dancey or more like juke, Chicago footwork, like that's kind of more quantized music. But I'll still have unquantized elements. So I might quantize something and then the hi-hats are loose or something like that. So it's very specific. But 9 times out of 10, I don't quantize. But when I do quantize, actually, I don't know if a lot of people do this, but I don't think they go into the grid and play with the setting because by default it's on 116, but I always go to 164.
Okay, okay, interesting.
Because if you go, because then it's the widest grid. So even though it's quantized, it's the loosest quantization. So it's like quantized, but it's almost close to how you played it. It's like barely correcting it. Whereas 1/16 is going to be very
It's
rough.
That's interesting.
That's the way I quantize.
Control how much quantization you want to have when moving things around.
I don't understand free. I see free, but I don't get what that means. What is that?
It's then not it's basically the non-quantized mode, meaning that it's looser than the 64. Shift things around a little bit, without.
So when you shift it is when the quantized comes in. That's what the free is. That was just saying.
I'm not even sure. Like I need to test it because my impression is that the swing only works when you put the quantize on. Actually,
buckle up, we up.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say because the reason I feel like it is working without quantize. Because I've listened to it before, like I've played the drums. I didn't have quantize on, but then I could hear it and I'll start pushing the swing and I can hear it changing subtly. So that's why I've always been in that understanding that even it's working without quantize.
That would be...
В Женеве состоялись встречи в группах по стратегическим вооружениям и по космосу. Советская сторона видит свою задачу в подготовке проекта договора.
I can hear a difference as I slide it without quantize on. So
Александр Сериков.
The interesting mix technique in quantized, non-quantized is it's an originally Dibia thing, but shout out to Tyrone who actually demonstrated this to be. He did it in Ableton. He would just put the kick on the one, which will create his rhythm, and then he turns off the tempo, the click, and everything. He has like the one is locked in, and the rest doesn't matter.
That's what I used to have to do on the SP44.
Exactly. It's the SP44. And then I've seen, like, obviously you mentioned it before as well, that your go-to is with the AUM is the fly tape. Wait, the low fly is the fly tape. Is this?
Because actually I'm pretty much all Koala. Like I know a lot of people like stibble stuff out and stuff, and you probably can get a really good sound like that, but I'm just simple with it. I'm like, nah, I don't want to do all that. So I just do it all in Koala, and I have Koala as like kind of the main input, and then there's only 3 plugins that I use. One of them is a lot newer, and actually, let me find the exact name. I think it's called Widener. Have you heard of Widener? Do you know that? Let me find it. I want to tell you the exact name. Okay. See, that would have been wrong. It's I'll try to hold it here. It's Wider Touch. Looks like that. And if I go into it, because one of the weaknesses I've found in my sounds, that's okay. It won't open without something hooked up. But it's I wanted to increase the stereo field more. And it's just it's literally just that. Like if you slide it up, it shows different percentages and it's getting wider and bigger. So I'll use that now. And then it's different. It differs between fly tape or fly tape 2. Like fly tape, I like the tape aesthetic of it better. It's a bit more harsh and it's more focused on just that aesthetic. Whereas Flat Tape 2, you got better effects. Like I like the stutter, I like the tape stop, the break.
Yep, that's missing in Koala, so therefore you have to get it in.
That's right. Yeah, so I like the stutter on that better. I feel like it's more control. Like you can pick the like the times, whatever. And that's kind of, I use the break. I use the lo-fi sometimes as a little effect, like and then off. But other than that, I'll do it kind of for like the tape aesthetic. I do like that sound. So yeah, so it's usually Koala, maybe a small percentage of widener, and then either Flat Tape or Flat Tape 2. But that's kind of I don't get too crazy with it. That's pretty
minimalistic. That's really, I mean, your main achievement here is pushing Koala to its limits and beyond. That makes it. And I forgot to ask, like, mixing in Koala is obviously all by, like, you just mix by ear. Are you worried about levels that much, or like the overall loudness?
Well, I mean, I know for a fact that's where I have lots of room for improvement is in the mixing, because I'm kind of more in the creative aspect. But in terms of what I've done, kind of like from the 404 and stuff like that. So from the 404, I learned that you kind of do have to use your ear. You don't have levels, you don't have a meter. And then the Koala, it got freer because now you can pan. You couldn't like even pan in the 404. So I do use it's just ear. And it took me a while, but I think literally like just now, like probably the last 2 things I've made, I feel like I'm finally starting to get better at the mix in Koala. And it's one thing has been turning the kicks way down. Like for a while, I've had the kicks are in stereo and they're loud, and like even when I listen to Walla, like I'm ecstatic about the way people have responded to it. But when I hear it, I only hear like the errors. Like I can't listen to it without just being like, oh man, it just sucks.
The curse of the creator, though. That's
exactly. But no, I've learned how to turn things down, and basically in Koala, it's a lot of using the tone. Like getting the tone right. Almost everything, almost all of my sounds, I kind of have like the tone up, kind of like almost to the N or the E, kind of more in the high pass to leave space for like the low end. So like the low end, I don't want it muddy at all. I just want that bass and kick. Yeah,
that's
so,
it.
So using that.
I shout out to measuring in distance to letters in those things. Exactly. And so you cut off the high end on the kicks and you mono them. Do you mono them additionally? Because is it true? Because that was my impression just recently. We talked in the sessions that mono signal is like way more control and everything. And I monoed kicks. I know for a fact that
I do know that usually if it's already a mono, when I click it, it says mono already. Like usually if it's a bass, I try to click mono and it'll say mono already. So now okay.
So you apply the filter way more these days to your drums, or to like over?
Oh, actually, I've always done that. I've always done the tone, because I can't remember where I learned that. I think it's kind of from a mixture of things. Like listen to people talk about how Jay Dilla did EQ'd in the 3000, and then like a couple of different sources, but it's kind of made me think like, okay, if I'm not really looking at levels and stuff, let me just try to EQ as best I can and just make sure the low end isn't muddy. Any other sound that doesn't need low end, I just use the tone just enough. It depends what it is, and depends where it's panned, and depends how much it's turned up. And then you're just using ears, just turning things down, panning, playing with the tone. And if something's too intense, like a really strong bass sound, then I'll actually resample it with a little bit of filter to get some of the high end out and stuff. So I use that when I need as a tool too.
That is that's surgery right there.
Yeah.
This is like, yeah, mindful filtering. Because it is like there is a level, you can see the level, but
yeah,
you don't see it that much.
Yeah, and like a smack pack, like if you have like a smack pack bass, like that ski got out of his moon, those are like, they take up the whole frequency of Koala. So I'll always have to put one of his bass and like filter it. And then even when I have it on the pad, I still have to like do some tone. I turn it down quite a bit and it's still powerful. So some sounds you really got to tone, because I feel like, I don't know, like the range is not as wide or something in Koala. So you got to kind of really turn down the powerful ones and tone them like really big basses. Yeah.
That's helpful. That's very interesting. But yeah, it does have a dramatic effect for sure, depending, like it's an interesting thing in Koala that the especially the filter seems to have this resonance automatically applied as well, right? If you go to the extremes, you hear a lot of resonant material. So it goes like low filter, and then it becomes like really boomy, and the same for the high end. So it's again like more of it's a creative filter, I call it. So it's you have to find the sweet spot for everything and pen it out.
You just made me remember too. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Sometimes, like if it's a big bass, you filter down, it makes it more boomy. So what I have to do then, it does make it more boom, but my first goal was just to take out any of the high range that it was affecting. And now once I have that on the pad, I won't go down on the tone, I'll go up. So I'm kind of almost putting it in a high pass, but it was so boomy, it kind of balances it out. So now you can control it. Yeah.
So you resample and then resample again with the filter. I never thought of that.
Yeah.
That's a cool technique.
Yeah, I was gonna say it just gets it in control.
Okay, great conversation. Thank you so much. What's the process after that? Maybe let's roll back a little. Like, what's the routine actually?
Oh, well, and by the way, we good, bro. I got probably like 10 more minutes. So yeah. but like I was gonna say is that no, it's I mean that's kind of the art of Koala that first off, there is no structure, man. I don't got much time. You know, I got like I got twins, father. So what Koala allows me to do is if I'm like got to start work, I'm like, oh, I got 10 minutes. Let's start on the drum loop. Boom. Okay, now go to work. And now it's like, all right, right before I go to bed, hey, maybe 20 minutes, I can see if I can make a melody. So it's kind of like when I can type stuff. And if it wasn't for Koala being as accessible or mobile as it is, like I probably wouldn't be able to make anything. So the fact is there's no routine, there's no schedule, like it's completely random. But because I can just pull out my phone or it's like a tablet, it's like, you know, it's accessible when that time comes up. So,
whenever it's. But do you have like, is it a daily thing? Something that you have like, okay, 10 minutes, here I go.
For the most part, just because I like it so much. It's not always predictable, but it's like for the most part, I try to get a little bit in. Like daily,
Well, okay, I know that's like Matt will be super excited about the video. What was the videos they create the same illusion of like super complex and everything, but I have the feeling that you do the same magic as in Koala. So what's the hack?
You know what? It is a similar lane because I just use an app. So it's Power Director. And you can get that on. I was doing it on Android for a while. Now I'm like on tablet, but it's a really powerful, just little editor app. And like, it's kind of the same thing. It's like I'll dig kind of same digging for a sample. Like I'll just dig through YouTube, different keywords, whatever's on my mind, until I find like a visual that's interesting. And then kind of my go-to is I always like to reverse it. So and sometimes not only will I reverse the imagery, I'll change the orientation so it's upside down. So now it's like sometimes what you guys see is like it's reversed. I change the orientation, and then I use like blending, where I'll have like something underneath, but it's like going on in the background. So that's why you kind of see subtle things like coming in and out, kind of creates like a cool movement. And then the fun part is like I never sync it to the beat. The visual is just a visual, but I create an illusion that it is by timing like a filter. Like if there's a part where like a synth comes in, for that part comes in, I cut it and I'm adding an effect now, like the filter changes. So even though the video's not synced, your eyes, you notice there was a change. Like, and I play with that. I play with filter blending, and it just creates something unique, because I realized I didn't want it to be like anyone could just go to YouTube and get the same visual and have the same video as me. I wanted it to be like
they are just as unique as the beats themselves. That's quite. And do you is this the process? So you finish the beat, you make the video, and then you push it out on Instagram, I guess.
If it's something that I'm gonna post, like everything, I don't like there's some things I'm gonna hold it off. Like I don't want to share it yet. It's in the cut. But if it's something that I'm gonna share, then yeah, after I've completed it, I might have something in mind, like kind of because I'm hearing the music and it's giving me certain images in my head. And then I see if I can find that image or as close as I can. And I kind of go from there. Yeah, then I'll make the vid. Yeah.
How long does it take? And what's the
it probably most of the time is the search, but making it can be pretty quick, just because I got kind of a flow down now. And I kind of have like kind of how we talked about like a sound library. From the past, I kind of have like an effects library. Like I kind of know what I'm gonna go to. I know what filter I'm gonna use. I know like, so that happens quick. Once I find the visual, got the music, the edit is like maybe 10 minutes. I might knock it out.
All right. Yeah. Well, cool. Yeah, that's yeah. I'm pretty sure Matt is going to enjoy that. I'm pretty sure he'll still have a bazillion questions he can ask you about it, because
I love Matt, man. He's a great energy, and he's such a skilled musician himself, but he's so interested in like other people's art and trying to learn. Like, yeah, I love that energy.
Yeah.
Hack all the things, drink all the booze.
That's what I don't want to. Wow, I lost all concept of time. Like way over time.
Hey, that's all right. That's like Joe Rogan.
One.
You got one more?
Is there something that you hear a lot, or like happens to you where you think like people, come on?
Probably, like in terms of producers, I mean, not too much really, but one thing sometimes I'm kind of like, what do you?
Работоголиках, которые не мыслят просто своего существования без работы.
You've liked the video. You might have just followed me, and your first DM is, yo, let's collab, right? I'm like, first off, who are you? First off, like we have no relationship. I don't know what you do. So then I go to the page, and then the page is like, if I have to scroll down, like, it's like a selfie, and then it's a picture of like a cat. And then it's a picture, and like I gotta scroll down 6 things to find any music, and then finally you find something that has a play button, and you push it, and it's like a little preview, like tape dropping. It's like 10 seconds, like boom, 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 and that's it. I'm like, what do you do? And you're asking me to collab? Like, I'm like, man, like I don't even respond. Like, I'm just wondering, like, how did you think this was gonna go? Like, I don't understand that. But probably what annoys me most isn't really producers, it's like rappers, because I think people, they don't understand the difference. It's like because they see the stuff I'm doing, and just because there's not a vocalist on it, I make like beat music and stuff, they confuse it and think that you just make beats they can rap on, you know, and they get confused. It's confusing because I can make rap beats, but
Who is this? Never been new to this.
primarily, you know, I'm like low end theory, LA beat scene type shit. Like I'm not really creating for lyrics. It's like I'm already like this is complete. Like I'm not sending it to artists. This is finished. I've done it. Like I've told the whole story already. They don't get that, so they're like, "Yo, send me let's cook up, make me some beat." And I'm like, that's not what I'm doing right now. I'm not making rap beats. So, but they don't understand it. It's a bit confusing, and I get why they're confused, because they look at me, they're like, he's making beats, like, you know, but they don't get they don't get it.
And is it like keeping it in that lane? Is there something that, you know, everybody, because you're in Australia, like, is there like a go-to thing that is like, oh, yes, the water is turning the other way? I don't know, like, you know, just because you're there, it's like, hey, how are the kangaroos today, or something like this.
It's more the spiders and the snakes. You know, everybody's worried about that.
The
which
poison
is a real thing.
Yeah. Like, are you like aware of this when? I mean, you're in Sydney. I think or is it like it's not like that bad?
It is. It's like I mean, obviously, the more west you go, the more crazier it gets.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm in the city, but even in the city, you know, like one of the most common snakes is a red belly black snake, and that's venomous. Like you gotta go to the hospital, and they're like walking to the shopping center. People's taking pictures, like, "Hey guys, watch out today," and posting it on Facebook. So it's you know, there's common like deadly stuff for sure, but it's like, really though, being American, I realized, like, you know, in America, we actually have more dangerous wildlife. Like we got coyotes, we got wolves, we got bears, we got mountain lions. We also got rattlesnakes. You know, like here, other than the snakes and spiders, it's like wallabies. It's like echidnas. You know, it's not really dangerous. Like in terms of wildlife, other than the poisonous stuff. So yeah, it's definitely, there's truth, and then there's like exaggeration with it too. So yeah.
Poisonous, is there like one piece of local food that you are specific like enjoy that obviously the rest of the world is not aware of?
Yeah, not really, because I mean, probably my favorite food down here is like Japanese, you know, like, because I love sushi. So you know, so yeah, it's nothing authentic or crazy like that. So yeah.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
Well, I thank you so much for this
my pleasure,
deep dive. Man. It was super insightful. I will.
This was cool.
Go ahead.
It's interesting because it's made me think about how that I actually am doing some technical things that maybe I didn't realize other people aren't doing. Like that resample loop. You know, I started thinking about it. It's like, yeah, I think a lot of people do it different. So yeah, there's probably quite a bit that I'm doing that's a little different. So it's been cool. You know, you had great questions. Like, it's been a good conversation. Yeah.
I'm just interested, and I've been stealing this whole time. I can tell you that.
Sidechain gang.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. This will be just to be transparent here. I will share it in the Discord. It's not going to the general public, but I'm definitely would love the Sidechain gang to have, because there are obviously like a few heads who are very interested in this, and I hope people will be as delighted and excited about this stuff as I was. Thank you very much.
Hey, my pleasure, man.
I'll see you in the Zoom.
For sure.
Because that's the beast. In terms
I'm gonna
of...
try to stop in tomorrow, man. I'm gonna try to hop in.
It's fun.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
Yeah, I'll see you soon. Have a great day. Thank you again. And yeah, peace out, Sidechain gang.
Sidechain.
Peace. Peace, peace.
Технически. Только тогда мы сможем покупать нашим детям игрушки красивые, современные и недорогие.